Once upon a time, in a small village nestled in the heart of the forest, there lived a young girl named Sarah. She was known for her kind heart and her love for exploring the woods around her home. One day, while wandering through the forest, Sarah stumbled upon an old, abandoned house. Being the curious soul that she was, she decided to investigate. As she approached the house, she could feel a chill run down her spine. The windows were boarded up and the door was hanging off its hinges. The house seemed to be in a state of disrepair, but Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that there was something about it that called to her. She pushed the door open and ventured inside. As soon as she stepped over the threshold, Sarah knew that she had made a grave mistake. The house was filled with an eerie silence that was almost palpable. The walls were covered in cobwebs, and the floorboards creaked under her feet. She could feel a cold breeze blowing through the house, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Suddenly, she heard a noise coming from upstairs. She froze, her heart pounding in her chest. She couldn't bring herself to move, and she felt like she was rooted to the spot. After what felt like an eternity, she mustered up the courage to investigate. As she climbed the stairs, the noise grew louder. It sounded like someone was walking around upstairs. She could hear the floorboards creaking and the sound of someone breathing. She was terrified, but she knew she had to find out what was making that noise. As she reached the top of the stairs, she found herself standing in front of a door. The noise was coming from behind it. Her hand was shaking as she reached for the handle, and she hesitated for a moment before finally turning it and pushing the door open. The room was dark, but she could make out a figure standing in the corner. It was a ghostly apparition, its eyes glowing in the darkness. It was dressed in tattered clothes and its hair was wild and unkempt. It stared at her with a look of malice, and Sarah knew that she had to get out of there. She turned and ran, her heart pounding in her chest. She could hear the ghost following her, its laughter echoing through the house. She stumbled and fell, but she managed to get back to her feet and keep running. Finally, she reached the front door and burst out into the sunlight. She ran as fast as she could, her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't stop until she reached the safety of her home. From that day on, Sarah never ventured into the forest again. She couldn't shake the memory of the ghostly apparition that she had seen in that abandoned house. And to this day, the villagers still speak of the haunted house in the woods and the ghost that still haunts it to this day. Sarah's experience was just a legend and a warning for the villagers who never dared to explore the abandoned house. But the fear of the ghost still lingers in the air as a chilling reminder of what could happen if they ever dared to venture too deep into the woods. After her terrifying experience, Sarah tried to put the ghostly apparition out of her mind, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She would often wake up in the middle of the night, convinced that the ghost was standing at the foot of her bed. One night, as she lay in bed trying to fall asleep, she heard a noise coming from outside her window. She got out of bed and walked over to the window to investigate. As she looked out, she saw the ghostly figure standing in her backyard, staring up at her window. Sarah screamed and ran out of her room, but when she got to the backyard, the ghost was gone. She told her parents about the ghost, but they didn't believe her. They thought that she was just imagining things, but Sarah knew what she had seen, and she knew that the ghost was real. She started to do some research on the abandoned house in the woods. She discovered that the house had been built by a wealthy businessman in the 1802nd, but he had been murdered in the house by one of his business associates. She also learned that the ghost of the businessman had been seen wandering the woods around the house ever since his murder. Sarah realized that the ghost that she had seen in the house was the businessman's ghost, and he was still seeking revenge for his murder. Sarah decided that she had to do something to put the ghost to rest. She went back to the abandoned house with a group of her friends, determined to find a way to lay the ghost to rest. As they entered the house, they could feel the ghost's presence. It was as if he was watching them, waiting for them to make a mistake. But Sarah and her friends were determined to finish what they had started. They searched the house from top to bottom, looking for any clues that might help them put the ghost to rest. Finally, they found a journal hidden in a secret compartment in the floor. The journal belonged to the businessman and it revealed the truth about his murder. The businessman had been betrayed by his business associate, who had killed him for his money. The ghost had been wandering the woods, seeking revenge for his murder. With this information, Sarah and her friends were able to put the ghost to rest. They held a ceremony in the abandoned house, and the ghost finally found peace. After that night, the ghost was never seen again, and the abandoned house was no longer considered haunted. Sarah and her friends were hailed as heroes, and they were forever known as the ones who had put the ghost to rest. But even though the ghost was gone, Sarah could never forget the terrifying experience she had in the abandoned house. She had encountered the ghostly apparition face to face, and it had changed her forever. The legend of the haunted house in the woods still lingers on, and the villagers still speak of the ghost who once haunted the house. But Sarah knew the truth, and she knew that the ghost had finally found peace. And the ghost story will forever be told to remind everyone of the past and not to repeat the same mistakes as the businessman did. After Sarah and her friends had successfully laid the ghost to rest, they returned home feeling victorious and relieved. But as they